listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, hey, kids, here it is. It's Thursday night. Happy Thursday night. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my program, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. Check out all the time slots where you can find this show throughout the day. And, of course, I've got to throw in the caveat, I'm not actually broadcasting to Odyssey tonight. Odyssey is my parent radio station. And we are on hiatus there since we had done the makeshift studio down in Louisiana. And now that we're back home, we're trying to restructure some things and get back on there so we can broadcast live there and live here on the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And all of you here already know that. And so I just thought I'd throw it in there for anybody seeing this in archive that doesn't know that. And by the way, if you look at your window in YouTube, go down under the screen, you'll see a little button that says join. So hit the join button and you can listen to the show. And while the show's playing, it'll pop up a little pop-up window and tell you 3 ways you can become a member of this channel. And that's $2 a month, $5 a month, $15 a month. You can see what you're supposed to be getting for all of those different levels of perks. And so go sign up, become a member. That helps this show stay vital, pay its bills, etc., yada, yada, yada. You all know that stuff. And also go over and check out my Etsy page. That's etsy.com, ETSY.com, and /shop/son of a patriot. And you can find that, of course, over on my main website. I couldn't think of the word. I was going to say channel. My website, scottallenroberts.com. You can click on the Son of a Patriot link there. And that's got all the cool stuff. As Doug said, Doug says he'll never join the cult of Scotty. Well, you know what? Doug is already part of the cult of Scotty. And you can get the Cult of Scotty merchandise, cool t-shirt designs, coffee mugs, stuff like that over at my Etsy page. So avail yourself of that. Boom. Whoo, boy, that's all my advertising out of the way at one fell swoop. I don't usually do that all together at once. I could make it last 12 minutes. Somebody once told me on a 2.5-hour show I did before we were the official radio show, somebody told me, well, you spent the first 12 minutes advertising your own stuff before you ever got to your content. I said, you know what? My show. I can do whatever I want. If you didn't like it, if you didn't like the other 2 hours and 48 minutes worth of content, I'm sorry I screwed it for you with my first 12 minutes of telling you how to buy my stuff. So, and I went back and I looked at it and it was really only about 6 minutes. So they doubled their criticism. So what? And so, folks, I'm coming to you tonight fresh from just another learning lesson in marriage. You think by my age, I would know how marriage is supposed to work, how relationship stuff is supposed to work. Man, I am just getting constant red check marks. Everything is me doing something wrong, or I'm not courteous, or I'm not attentive, or I'm not here, or I'm not there, or I don't understand, and I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. And every day it's something new. So I just got to tell you, I'm still on the learning curve. And maybe by the time I get it all, I don't know, I'll be a slave or I'll be dead. So something like that. You guys all know, all those you married types, you know how that's supposed to go. And so today, maybe we'll talk more, but that's why I talk so much about the psychology of relationship, the psychology of marriage, the psychology of family stuff, because it's all an ideal. It's all the thing we strive to be and we strive to get at. And I think what we need to convince ourselves of, not convince ourselves like we've got to coerce ourselves into something, but something we need to understand is generally when we have a loving partner and we love that partner and the partner loves us, we're not out to do something to thwart you. We're not out to do something wrong. We're not out to create havoc in your life. But many times it ends up that way because of male-female thinking. Those are two different things, folks. And when you click in, a guy's supposed to figure out how the female works, but the female's never supposed to figure out how the guy works, it seems. But remember, we're physiologically different. We're wired differently. We think differently. And so we have to cater to that in each other. It's not a one-sided trip. So still learning. Hopefully, maybe Mandi Moo from Australia can shed a little light on relationships. Maybe she can tell us how it's all supposed to work. I've got her sitting in the wings for live from Australia. It's Mandi Moo. Hey, how you doing, Mandi?
Hi, I'm good.
Good
Thanks.
to
How are
see you. I'm fantastic, and I'm gonna see everybody hear her okay. I want to make sure my volume on you is up the way it's supposed to be. And let me just check your audio here.
Is that all right?
Edit mic settings. It's saying to automatically. There you go. Give me a 10 count.
1, 2, 3.
There
Can
you go.
hear
That's
me?
good enough. I got you.
Awesome.
I got you. Just brought your volume up a little bit.
Awesome.
Field Guy says, where have I seen her before? I think she was in some episodes of Star Trek, Field Guy. And she also was probably in the movies. I think that's where you saw her. She sounds good, says Pure Love Ascension. Laura or Lori. I always mix those up. And there's Teresa Dantone. Good to see you. By the way, Mandi, it's nice. I like to say hi when we do these live shows. I can say hi to people. So, Mandi, it's Teresa, it's good to see you. Susie Q, good to see you. Doug Stack, good to see you. And let's see who else we got going here. Michelle Canham Free is here tonight, and Field Guy, and Dark Star. Hello, Dark Star. How are you doing? Do I know you other than Dark Star or by any other name? Dark Star by any other name is still Dark Star. So I'm glad to have you in here. Is it the Dark Star I know? I think I know. I don't know. So Doug Stack is here. Let's see who else we've got going on. We've got blah, blah, blah. Everybody else that I've already said hi to. I'm glad you're here. I don't see Matt Finn yet. Master Finn tonight. Oh, there he is. Very early on, Master Finn was in. Good evening, Master Finn. And everybody else who's here. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. And of course, as I said, we've got Mandi Moo from Australia. And I'm glad to have you. We've had a couple of talks about some of the stuff that you are interested in, the things that you do. And you really intrigued me. You showed me a lot about some of the rocks that you pick, that you look through over there in Australia. You've talked to me about some of the things after we talked about the Nephilim and the Watchers and things like that here. You had some insights onto that, some things that you channeled, some stuff. We talked about that. You talked about dreams, and I know there's some things about dreams you can't talk about because they're other people's dreams, but some of your own dreams. And you talked about the giants. After the last few days, we've been talking about the Fae and the giants and all of that. And you had something very interesting to say about the giants and the trees and the cutting down of trees and so on. So here's what I want to do, folks. I want to turn a little bit of the talking time over to Mandi. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody here with that glorious accent of yours? And you know, by the way, on my phone, my old phone, my Apple iPhone, who's the Apple voice stuff? I'm not Alexis or something like that. On my Apple iPhone, I had it tuned to a female Australian voice because I thought they were sexy and they were cool. So now you can start with your sexy, cool Australian accent and wow people and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, put me on the spot a little bit. So, yes, I do. I live in Australia. I live just outside of Brisbane, and have a crystals and minerals shop. And I really love exploring, learning about minerals, and yeah, just exploring some of the curiosities of Australia. It's I always grew up thinking, oh, it sucks I don't have history like some of these European countries or things like that. But then I've really started to realize in the last few years that having one of the oldest cultures on earth, we have such a rich history in the cave art and the dreaming stories that come from our traditional people. It's very interesting. So yes, do a lot of stuff around looking into that and just I wouldn't say the esoteric, but just things that really get the mind thinking about the world and what we've been told about it.
All right. Well, and you say something like Australia itself as a nation isn't quite as old. It's how old is Australia? 200, 250 years at the most, something like that. And
Yes.
yet the history of Australia goes back hundreds of thousands of years. So this is what you're into investigating and finding out more about and learning.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now,
definitely.
did this all come about because of your what would you call it? Not love of, but your interest in rock picking and looking at rocks and then looking at strata of rocks and all. This is how your interest came, or did some of the what people might think of as the weird things, the channeling, the dreams, the spirituality, did they all come together? Did one come out of the other? One come after the other? How did you formulate all that?
So I guess I've always been more interested in exploring my own country rather than other countries, and that's just because of my own fear of actually being in a foreign country. So yeah, very much wanted to explore my own country, and then started collecting crystals. Well, I thought I started collecting crystals in about 2015, and going through boxes of old stuff in the last couple of years, I've actually realized I had done it since I was young. I'd had these stones and things like that. And so it's kind of much of a muchness. So it's the more I learn about some of the history, the more I'm very much interested in the rocks, and then the history of the rocks gets me more interested in the history of Australia.
Sure. Now, do you ever feel like, you say you have this fear of going to other countries, do you ever feel like when you leave the civilized cities of Australia and you start going, Australia is an awfully big place, and so people don't think about that. You start getting out of the cities and into the outback and out in the country, in country, so to speak, you could be just like you're in another country. Do you run across Aboriginal tribes, Aboriginal peoples that seem like you're already traveling to some other foreign place?
So I last year decided to go on a bit of an adventure. I drove to Uluru, Mount Connor, and Catatucha, which is so Ayers Rock, as most people know it. And so I drove there across the Plenty Highway, and the Google Maps didn't tell me that the Plenty Highway wasn't sealed. So we have three highways that go across there. From the only way I was allowed to go with the corona lockdowns. So from Queensland, and two of them are unsealed, and Google Maps didn't tell me this. So I literally drove for 2 days.
In the desert?
Yes, in the desert, no reception, across. The first sign I came across, it was a painted hood of a car, and it said "Cars with brakes must stop," and I'm just like, oh, okay, that's funny. Oh. And then 200 Ks up the road, I come across another thing, which "Cars with brakes must stop," and I'm like, okay. And it's like, literally, you are in the middle of nowhere. If you can chuck a car together, you can drive it. But yes, I haven't, everything was on lockdown, and I haven't had too much experience with getting to go into those communities when I went because of the corona. But yes, it's definitely like, it's more than like traveling to another country. It's completely different in Northern Territory.
Amanda B in our chat room is from Australia. She lives in Australia, and she born and bred there, I guess. And she said it's like driving in red dirt out there.
It is. You are literally driving in red dirt, and you have nothing but red dirt, 360 degrees around you. And yeah, so I drove, like I said, 2 days on a main highway, which was actually across somebody's property, which is 2,900,000 hectares, and that's a cattle property.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so who are the stop signs for?
They're just saying cars with brakes must stop. So if you can get a car together out there, you can drive it. So it's called bush mechanics. Have a look into it, Aussie bush mechanics. It's quite interesting. And so they will just get as many pieces as they can. They will have crates in for seats. And so if you see a car coming, the chances are that they might not have brakes. So you should stop.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just, it was it was completely different. It's so big. So we are about the same size as mainland America with less than 1/10 of the population.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and most of the cities are all around the coastal areas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So tell me a little bit first. Let's go into a little bit about your dreams. I was talking to you about wanting to talk about the spirituality, the mythology, the mysterious side of the religious side of Australia as you're finding it and as you're coming across it. What's being revealed to you? What would you say? What began this for you, where you started getting information? Was it all, was it a channeled type of a thing? Was it meeting with Aboriginals? Was it, what was it that got this information to you in the first place and made you start looking more and more into the spirituality and the mysteriousness of it in Australia?
So I had my auntie Laverne, who's an Indigenous elder, and she played a big role in my childhood life. So for about 8 years, but I wasn't too aware of too many cultural stories. But it's yes, I had something happen at the beginning of last year, and I started having some really strange dreams, which really, started
So
to
is
get
this
me
relatively
wanting to go.
new? This is
Yes,
relatively new for you.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So I've been looking into some of the anomalous sites. So we have some strange sites in Australia with artifacts that don't make sense. So pre kind of British colonization and things like that. So I was very interested in that, but more so the more I looked into that and the more I explored across the country, the more interesting cave art that I found, the stories that I would come across, which is hard to try and get people to open up about those stories to me. So I would find what I could online. Yes, and it very much matched some of the dreams that I was having.
Tell me about some of your dreams.
Oh, um, so I didn't know what songlines were. So one of my dreams was being in Australia in the red dirt and singing, and these lines would open up and a snake carved. So that's what sort of started some of it. And then, like I said, I started looking more into the Aboriginal Indigenous culture, and I realized so they have they're the oldest astronomers in the world. So they've been documenting, especially the constellation of Pleiades, for quite a long time.
Okay.
So thousands of years. And this is where I have trouble understanding some of what we're told, because the time frame from what science and carbon dating doesn't fit into the time frame of a lot of other things. So yes, it's hard to say how old some of these.
So would you say that the dating is the carbon dating system? Do you think erroneous? When you have the dreams and the things like the spirituality, you say the two don't mesh on a timeline. Which do you find is more trustworthy? Which is the more factual?
Well, finding a lot of holes in, as you've I'm sure you found on your journey. I'm finding a lot of holes in things that we've been told, and from a very young age is true. So there's I go more with my intuition of my feeling of things. Hence why I guess I'm drawn to Mount Connor a lot, because I believe it's an ancient tree stump.
Here, you know what? I've got a picture of that. It's going to be a little choppy, but here, folks, I'm going to share my screen with you all, and so you're going to see that. And the first thing you'll see is the broadcast come up on my screen. But here, this is you call this Mount Connor, right?
Yes.
So there it is. That's what it looks like. Now you say that this is an ancient tree stump. Now, how big is this area?
I believe it's approximately 5 kilometers across.
Okay, so roughly,
about
I
3
can't do
miles.
I can't do the transfer. 5 kilometers is roughly
3 miles,
5
maybe.
miles, I think, but I don't think so.
3 miles.
So 3 miles? Okay. Well, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. There we go. And so now 30-foot mushrooms, says Amanda B. She asks, Mandi, have you seen the National Parks and Fire Archives, the trees in the northern NSW?
No, but I'd be very interested to, because I have have looked a fair bit around Emerville and things like that, as well as Moorlambar. So yes, be quite interested to know about.
Okay. Now, what makes you believe that this could possibly be an ancient tree stump? If you imagine a forest of trees that size, that's gonna take up an awful lot of space. So with a forest of trees that size, is this from an old Aboriginal mythology? What is it? Are there more mountaintops like this? Is this the only one there that's like that?
So that's the only one that of its size, but we see very similar things all over the world. In America, you have your mesas, so we have these things all over the world. Like I said, they very much take on tree stumps. I don't believe they were all that big, but then I go through other places. So we have a place in Australia, and a great saying, it's called Beyond the Black Stump. And not many people know what the black stump is, and it's the Blackall Black Stump. And it goes up to about my waist height, and it's a decent roundness, and it's actually a petrified tree stump. And it was the main landmark that they used to survey most of the city off, the Blackall Black Stump. So a lot of these formations, I believe, like rock formations, seem to take on that same characteristic.
Okay.
And we know that things were a lot bigger back then. You have a look at dinosaurs, if the timeline happened how it tells us, and they were all quite bigger. So it would only make sense that the trees would have been bigger as well.
Now, I'm trying to find a picture of that, the Blackall Black Stump, and I'm seeing a couple of things. It looks pretty large. It looks like it's about 12, 15 feet across in diameter, something like that. But so, is that the one you're talking about?
Oh, it's not quite that big, the one that I've seen, but yeah. So yet again, I want to do like more of my research. But you've also got Winton in outback Queensland, which has a lot of these strange rock formations as well, which I believe are petrified boab trees, because you also find a lot of Australian dinosaur fossils there, the Muttaburrasaurus, and even just the opalization effect that we find within certain areas where you see these same formations. So we know Australia is your biggest producer of opal, but how did we create opal? We have a lot of trouble recreating it synthetically.
And so it comes just naturally, opal, or can we recreate it?
Well, they can create it, but it's not really anything like we would see opal to be.
Okay. All right. You know, Teresa mentioned something a little ways back, and I'm looking for it. Was she asking you to tell us about the Seven Sisters dream that you had, or the Pleiades dream? Was there something about that? The Seven Sisters dream story, she said.
Oh, my dreams. I don't have the book with me, but there is a story on the Seven Sisters. It's a dreaming story, and they were very interested in the constellation of Pleiades, and this seems to be very constant throughout a lot of cultures. And what I just found, so this is where I put the strange correlation is what I find quite interesting is we know that there's these chakra points on the earth, or energy points, and there's also these two serpent lines. So one's called the plume serpent and one's called the rainbow serpent line. And the rainbow serpent line would follow your Australian Aboriginals, and your plume serpent line would follow your Mayans. And I know that they really didn't find any Mayan remains. And in the constellation of Pleiades is actually a star called Maya. I also find the movement of Pleiades different to how we see other star constellations move through the sky as well. Yes.
What's different about it? Can you describe that? What's different about the movement of the Pleiades?
Well, this is where I'm still trying to
Sure,
I'm still new to this, still trying to understand astrology, but we can only see it at very certain times of the year, and where other stars are more fixed and things like that. So
now is that down in Australia? You can only see it at certain times of the year. Now, like here, we can see the Pleiades. I want to say I think we can see it year round, but usually I find that the Pleiades are high when Orion is coming up in the west, and coming up or going down in the west, whichever. And the Pleiades are always high in the sky. Are the Pleiades visible year round in Australia?
So not from where I've been able to see lately. So yes, I'm still learning about the Pleiades and things like that. But like I said, I just find it sort of interesting, and also the correlation of the Seven Sisters in a lot of your not only just Australian dreaming, but then also your Greek mythos and.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm thinking if it's anything like, like the Southern Cross, it's the old song say, when you see the Southern Cross for the first time, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. That's the, is it like that with the Pleiades? There's something to that. I know you can't see the Southern Cross up here where I am in the Northern Hemisphere.
No.
I went down to Honduras. I was in Honduras, which is darn close to the equator, the first time in the Caribbean when I saw the Southern Cross, way low on the horizon. So,
yeah,
it's interesting. The Pleiades. What do you make of the whole Pleiades thing? So, I hear Pleiades. I've heard it for years. It's in association with alien abduction. It's or alien theory. It's in association with ancient alien theory and the origins of mankind. I hear the Pleiadians all the time, that they're these peoples that have come here from the Pleiades. What do you make of all that? What do you think that's all about?
Well, there has to be some reason why they follow it. What my take is I do believe that maybe we were on a different resonance, a different vibration, different makeup as people, and possibly something happened. And as I believe the Mayans possibly went to the constellation of Pleiades, and you had the Aboriginals choose to stay here. Hence why they're called the traditional custodians of the land, which you don't really get anywhere else up until recently, with being called the First Nations peoples, or even the traditional custodians of the land. That's only something we've seen change worldwide in the last couple of years, where Australia, we've had that for quite a while. So yes, and just the fact they are the oldest culture. We say that we went through a cataclysm approximately 26,000 years ago, but Rio Tinto blew up a Aboriginal cave in WA in 2019, which showed evidence of Aboriginal occupation, what they say at 47,600 years ago.
Oh, wow. So now we're finding that with sites all around the world, too, sites that, we've said that we've only had things going back, recorded history to, like the Sumerian civilization in Mesopotamia, went back 4,500 years or something like that, 4,500 BCE. And then we start finding Göbekli Tepe that goes back another 6,000 to 8,000 years earlier than that. Then other stories of other civilizations and things they found that go back 20 and 40,000 years, and so on and so on and so on. So we're finding much more older things. What do you attribute these older age things to? Was just man around? Do you believe there was higher technology back then? Do you believe mankind was still in its infancy as far as civilization and technology back that long ago? I know that you had told me of some of the things that you had channeled and that you'd written about, and I leave that up to you what you want to, or even if you want to share any of that. But it seems to me that you seem to have some information, or at least a theory going, that there might have been something much older happening. Can you explain that a little bit?
So, yes, I do. I find it okay, when I have a look into Egypt stuff, I find it quite interesting that they are in Valley of the Kings, not Valley of the Pharaohs, where we find these tombs, but they were called pharaohs. I believe that the true pharaohs of Egypt were actually the elongated skulls that you find within Peru with your Paracas, with your one cranial join. And I this is just a theory, just throwing it out there, possibly believe that these were Syrians, because a lot of these cultures go around the Syrian people, and that possibly, if we did come down to a lower vibrational density, so this is going back to Atlantis and Lemuria, and I keep forgetting the name of that land bridge, something Kandam, between Australia and Madagascar, that also went up to India. So we know that these things fell. They tell us they don't know where Atlantis is, but we've got the Atlantic Ocean.
That's right. That's right.
Lemuria, I believe, did sink quite quickly before Atlantis, and Lemuria, you find, still exists in the form of New Zealand and Japan, and it's quite interesting when you actually compare the two, that they're quite similar in land size, and also the latitudes that they're on is one is 40 degrees north, the other is 40 degrees south. So yes, and your cultures from these places are a lot different. And a certain fall that happened around 24,000 years ago, which would tie in with a lot of these pop-up civilizations. And yeah, so I question whether a lot of civilizations are from where they necessarily say we are. So possibly we all share very different genetics. I know the Aboriginal genome has 4%, or there is something that they can't identify within it anywhere else in the world. So we have these civilizations just pop up out of nowhere. So I think it's a little, yeah, you've got Mu as well, like Amanda said.
Sure.
Yeah, and the world was very different, and we know these places sunk. They talk about it in many different things. So yes, I think the world was very different, and yeah.
All right. Dark Star over in the chat room mentioned the song from the Police, or Men. Is it Police or no? Men at Work. It's where women glow and men thunder, or men plunder, from the old song. And is there something to that line? Now, she quoted that line. Was it just in fun, or is there something about in the mythologies about women glowing, men plundering, and things like that? Is there something to that? And I don't ask that to be flippant or weird or anything. I just saw the line and I thought, sometimes lines in songs like that get quoted because there's something behind them. Was there anything to that? Men at Work. That's it. Yes. Thank you, Michelle. I knew it wasn't the Police. It was Men at Work.
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Okay. Just curious. Yeah. All that build up for nothing. Big letdown. I'm kidding. So tell me and tell us all something about, as I'm talking to you, you have a great many interests that are spread out, but they all seem to fall under an umbrella. This umbrella of wanting to know something about your country, wanting to know about things. So what would you pull out if I said, take the grab bag of Mandi Moo's interests and the things you're pouring your energy into, grab that one thing and pull it out and say, here's what I really want to talk about. What is it that really lights the fire of your interests?
It's finding the true answers, finding the facts behind things, because like I said, I see so many holes. So I will go down many rabbit holes, but I sort of find that they'll tie in.
Sure.
Down the line somewhere, yes.
All right. Oh, I didn't know if you had more to say. You froze up.
No.
It cut you off, or if it, or what? Okay, so that's really just finding answers to things, and so when you take your trips out into the outback, I guess it is the wilds of Australia, driving on red dirt highways for days to get to places with seeing not a single human being along the way. What brings you there? What do you, when you go to Ayers Rock or Uluru, you say it's called Uluru, what draws you there? What is it about that place that makes you want to see it and makes you want to go there and find out what it's about? What's the draw there, and what are you learning?
Well, one, how big this land is. I know how hard the trip was for me, and I have all of this technology. I can't imagine how people survived in that environment, and for a very long time as well. Just the massiveness of it, and it's just out of nowhere, just red flat dirt. What drew me there was a dream. I had a dream to take something there and to put it somewhere, and I followed my dream. So off in the car, and
can you? Are we prying too much to ask what was it you were asked to take there?
A crystal.
Okay. Now, was it to leave there or to take it there and draw energy from it? What was it?
I left it there.
You left it there? Okay. I'm just curious. I'm just asking because I want to know.
Yeah.
If you and I were sitting having a beer in a pub, I'd say, why'd you go there? What'd you leave there? Did you leave it? Did you take it? Did you say incantations over it or prayers or anything? You just left it there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And, when I arrived there, it was clear skies. And the following day, I got to watch it rain down the rock, which was absolutely
nice,
amazing. Yes. And that
Barrenness
was
January over in our chat room says Uluru was magnificent. So
it is.
Magical, it's magical.
It is. It's an energy that's really yeah, I can't describe it. I'm looking forward to going back there more. Like I said, there's just rich history. It was a place of birthing. It was, like I said, just a lot of culture. They knew that there was something very different and special about this place, and you can feel it when you're there. It is. Yeah.
Let me ask you, what is it about Ayers Rock or Uluru? What is it about that? I have been to places around the world that have a draw. Yeah, I mean, you get there and it's palpable. You can feel it when you're there. You may not even be in the mood to be looking for something or setting yourself in the right psychological tone or spiritual tone, but you can walk there, or you in the presence, and suddenly it's palpable. It fills the air around you. Is that what it was like there for you? And what is it? What do you think that place represents? What is it? What was it for you?
For me, getting to experience cultural history. So yeah, just touching that, I actually carry little jars of red Uluru dirt around with me everywhere. I feel earth there. I feel most at peace in, it's not just Uluru, it's the entire, we have a really big postcode. So it's 0872, and it actually covers a huge piece of Australia, of Northern Territory and Western Australia. And my heart just feels at peace there. I just feel in tune.
That's good.
And Teresa asked, did I believe that Australia was Lemuria? So I believe that the eastern coast of Australia is Lemuria. That happened to slam into the continent of Mu during the fall of Lemuria, when we had tectonic plate shifts and the land sunk. And that's so from your Great Dividing Range onwards in Australia is a place called Mu. And I believe that like I said, Mount Connor was the life tree of this continent of Mu. And it's why we see I believe it's why we see such a different topography from geological makeup, even from the Great Dividing Range to the eastern coast, than we do from west of that Great Dividing Range, which seems to be very arid desert, and northern and Queensland is quite lush. Oh yeah, the eastern coastline is quite lush. It's tropical. It's also a lot lower than of that coastline.
Oops, I lost my mic. That's fair. I understand that. So I know that there are many places I go that I don't know what the hell the place is really all about. I have some superficial ideas about the history and a little bit of knowledge, but I want to go see that place because something happened there, or because there's energy there. Now, like, take something very almost cliche or stereotypical nowadays, but the first time I went to Stonehenge, that was back in 1990. That was 30 years ago. First time I went to Stonehenge. And whoa, sorry, that snuck up out of nowhere. That happens to me every now and then on this show. I'm staring up into the bright light, and all of a sudden a sneeze. Boom, bang. Sorry, folks. But the first time I went to Stonehenge, I sat there and the whole place felt different to me. And I didn't know if it was because psychologically I had built the place up in my mind and I was feeling that, or if it was the actual place itself. That was one of the places I went where I mentioned, excuse me, feeling that palpable energy. So is this how you approach some of the places you go? You just, something about it, or it appeared in a dream, or it, excuse me, a little brief history of it. What draws you to the places you want to go?
I just go. So can I just ask you a question about Stonehenge? You said the energy. So was the energy better in the car park or Stonehenge?
Stonehenge, I felt. It was being there, was sitting on the hillside, the not really much of a hill there, but sitting on the grass. We just sat there for several hours waiting for the sun to go down, because I actually, as a photographer, I wanted to get some nice pictures as the sun was going down. And so we just sat there, and that's when I felt it. I was already understanding some of the spirituality there, the things that they assumed at least 30 years ago were connected to Stonehenge. And so I was feeling some of that. It was like, I don't know how to describe this. It was like the rudimentary period of time where I started dipping my toes into paganism a little bit. And so I was trying to learn things about places. There was that. There was also in Scotland that same year, I was up at Glencoe, and we've all seen pictures of the mountain without even knowing that's what it is. That big mountain that comes up and comes down with that sharp angle, the grassy mountain. You see it in a lot of movies and places like that. But Glencoe, the place where the McDonald's were massacred, and you go there. There's no remnant left of the McDonald clan there, and but you feel it. It's palpable. It's made its mark on the hills there, and it's soaked into the hillside there, and so you feel it. So there's places like that.
I was just curious if you had a chance to have a look at the megalithic post holes in the car park of Stonehenge.
No, I actually didn't. Back then, I didn't know anything about them 30 years ago. Okay. And it wouldn't have been until later that I actually knew about that. Tell me about it.
Oh, no, it was just something I stumbled yet again. So I just happened to stumble across. So I was just really curious, because that's what I found is, so it was maybe not necessarily Uluru, but it was other sites that I was definitely more drawn to along the way, would stop, and you can feel the energy change. Like when I was coming up to one of these places where I felt most comfortable, and I'd sort of fossick on the side of the road for a couple of hours. Which, those were some of the places that were of, more interest to me, I guess, just with So it's not just that. So it's all of Northern Territory. So I'm really interested, and I've tried to get up to Kakadu twice to have a look at some of the rock art that's there, which is actually quite interesting when you have a look at it. So you've got, boats and ships, and some of them are dated at almost 20,000 years, as well as, just a lot of rock, just the different rock arts and things like that, and the dating of them.
Yes.
And Norlangi Rock in Kakadu, some of the pictures there are quite interesting for what they are. And like I said, it's the history of it, and the journey as well. It's a very interesting one, like I said, just to go across and learn about different things, and things that you might not necessarily learn about at that site, you pick up in other places.
Yeah. Let me ask you too about, and do you know anything about this, first of all? This grid that is supposed to be around the world, that's global, this grid where you've got all these ancient sites that seem to align with each other. There's this alignment. Some of them are run along what we call the ley lines. Others, there are these grids between. You're digging for something, so you must have drawn something, or here we go. All right. Oh, you know what? I've got that. I think you sent that, and I can show that. Here, let me do that. I'll throw this up. I'm going to share my screen again, and here, guys, I'm gonna hang on. I just moved out of the window too quick there. Boom, share screen. Okay, over here, it's this one right here. Now it's a little bit fuzzy. Sorry to say, folks, we had some low resolution stuff. But is this the one you just held up? The planetary grid system, right. Becker Hagen's 1983. Comment on this. Where's Australia? There we go. You've got down in Australia, it says 44, way down in South Australia. We're bound for South Australia. It's an old shipping song, whaling song. So can you talk about that at all?
So like I said, I don't know much about the grid. Like I said, I just know I'm kind of seem to find myself just going to sites, and yes, a lot of these sites sort of correlate. So if you just go into Australia a little bit more, so you've sort of got in the middle of that, right on the side of that grid, but between your 44 and the other part is where you would find Uluru. So
down in here?
So no to the other side?
Oh, over in here.
No.
Oh, between 43 and 44? So down along there? Can you see the map?
Yeah, so it's pretty much in the center of Australia.
Oh, all the way up in here. Okay. All right. Oh, how convenient. It's right in the center of Australia. That's got to be mind-blowing, too, to say that structure is right. That natural structure is right smack in the middle of the continent.
And then also, if you have a look towards where you'd find the Atlantic Ocean, yes, that Iceland. So Iceland falls directly in the center of one of these.
Right up in here.
Yes.
Is this Iceland, or is Iceland the big one or the small one?
Greenland. So one of the ones down in here, so it falls into, I believe, Atlantis.
Okay, down in this area. Yes. That was one of the theories, is because they set sail from over here on the European and the Nordic coast, and they sailed over here to Iceland and Greenland, and then to the North American continent. So we're talking about something down in here. So interesting. Very interesting.
And there's also, if you have a look in Earth serpent grids, it follows just that pattern. It doesn't necessarily cross the top, and it doesn't follow or fall on any of Antarctica either. So
yes.
Yeah, so it's just, I found that quite interesting, and I believe so. When we have a look at these ancient sites, like what were they drawing off? Like they put these things in this place for a really good reason. So what happens if the crystals were supposed to work in a different way? We believe we're in the day and age of technology, but I believe we're in the day and age of crystals. I don't know, Crystal's going to love that. We're in the day and age of crystals, because all of our major technology, if you have a smartphone, like a Samsung or an Apple or something like that, So it needs gold, silver, copper. These are things that we cannot replicate, as well as real, not lab created emerald, ruby, and I believe sapphire. And then, not to mention, you have an LCD screen, which is a liquid crystal display, and you also have silica, which is man-made silica, but it's all crystals are needed in all of our technology. You take away natural minerals and crystals, and you have the ability for us to be able to communicate is gone in the way that we know it to be. But obviously, we'd say, oh, these were primitive people, but they could quarry, move, and put in place rocks with better precision than we can do these days. We can't even do that. So they were obviously had technology of some kind, and I believe that technology came from the crystals when this grid was active. I believe it's no longer active, hence why you find a lot of ancient Egyptian sites, or the ancient Egyptians went to other places, and I believe it very much follows this grid network, because you've got your main energy lines and then you have your sub lines and things like that. And I believe it's possibly supposed to come out of a new energy point every time. So they've depleted the crystals.
All right. And what I know about crystals could fill a big, what I don't know about crystals could fill a big bag. The big bag Doug Stack is asking for, a big bag of all good crystals. He needs somebody to send those to him. So, well, let me ask you, I know you're relatively new, year and a half, you started getting into this ago, you said. So have you written any books yet? You're planning on writing a book? You putting anything together?
I just sort of write what comes to me, and then so picked up with A7 and get a chance to have a chat there. But when it comes to writing a book, I'd love to, but unfortunately these days a lot of people don't have time to sit down and read books. So it's maybe finding new ways to get that information out there.
They'll listen to a podcast like this before they'll read a book.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that this is a great way to get some of that information out there. I do try and document and write down these things, because obviously these things might not always be available if I'm not online or something like that. So I do try and write them down, but to write a book, it's And
I didn't mean to elevate the writing of a book as the most important thing you could do. That's not what I meant by that. I was just looking for a way to say, do you have things that people can look at that you've written, that you've talked about? Do you have a blog site or a website or anything, or should they just get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me. So I do have my Mandi Mandela page on Facebook, and I'll swing you a link.
Okay.
To that.
All right.
Yeah. So, just on Facebook, trying to start YouTube and things like that. So learning StreamYard's a whole new thing for me. I'm used to playing with crystals, so technology and me just do not really get along sometimes.
I hear you.
So, definitely. Facebook. I'm trying to get my stuff out there. I'm becoming more confident and things like that. Doug.
Sure. What did Doug say now? Where are my credentials? He said. I don't have none. I ain't got no credentials. So
that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I found I couldn't get into school, and so when it comes to university, you're paying anywhere from 50 to 100 grand to do 18 subjects, 6 of which don't actually tie in with anything relevant to what you're doing. So they keep you kind of so busy in university. It could possibly be a programming thing. And also the good thing about not having credentials is there's nothing that they can turn around and go, you know what, if you publish that, we're going to rip up this piece of paper.
Right. Yeah. I was talking about just last week, I think it was, how I went through a lot of criticism after I wrote some of my books, because I'm non-credentialed, and I had the credentialed academia came after me. Some of them did, and said, you're not credentialed. And they said, what are your credentials? And I said, well, I graduated from high school and I went to 3 years of college without getting a degree. Then I was recruited into a seminary, and I went to 2 more years of seminary to work on my master's degree without having finished my bachelor's degree. They were going to tutor me in those. And then I dropped out and I went into advertising. And so I said, I've been researching for 30 years, plus 40 years, but I have no degrees. I have a high school diploma, and that's it, with 5 years of non-degreed education after that.
And if we took that attitude towards everything, we wouldn't have Windows, we wouldn't have Apple, we wouldn't have these are all people that dropped out of college. Some of those smartest minds were known to go, I can't do this whole university thing, and took different options. So I find it quite interesting that it doesn't matter whether you have credentials, like, oh, you created tape, but when you throw a theory out there, they're like, but where are your letters?
Well,
what letters do you have?
That's what I had. Some of these guys were saying to me, you're an awfully good artist. Maybe you should just stick with that. You've got a good track record as being an artist. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not a credentialed artist either. I said, does that then make all of my artwork fraudulent artwork? Like you're saying my writing is fraudulent because I don't have a degree? So there you go. Yeah. Experience means something.
Art is possibly one of the better ways to look at things, because when you look at things from in art, you find meaning in things where people might not necessarily find meaning.
Yes.
And you look at things with a very different point of view. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to come from an art side, because you actually come into that with more of an abstract, perspective on things, rather than going, okay, well, this is what a professor told us, so write it down, regurgitate it, test time, because you're going, but why? But why is it like that? And that's where the artist's mind comes from.
There you go. Well, I'll accept that.
All right. Yes. So you asked where I could find my stuff before. Yes, I keep forgetting. So all of my stuff is up on QofQCrystalNetwork.com under the Crystal Sciences page. So I have a lot of
what again? Say it again, and I'll type it into the chat room. It's called what?
QofQCrystalNetwork.com.
Just the letter Q of Q.
Yes.
Crystal Network.
Yes. .com.
See if that goes up there. Q of Q. Look at that in the chat room. Make sure that that's right.
Yeah.
So there it is. Q of Q.
Yeah, and you'll find like a lot of my luminosity stuff on there as well, as well as some of my other far out sort of theories on a few things.
Well, we'll have to take a look at that. Mandi, I want to thank you for being here. Anybody who wants to get a hold of you can just get a hold of you. Find you, Mandi Moo, over at YouTube or Facebook, correct?
Yes, or Facebook.com/Mandi with an I, Mandala Creations.
Mandala Creations. Got it. All right. I appreciate your coming on. Let me just drill your mind a little bit and try to find out what was going on, where you're coming from, some of the things you believe. So we'll have you on again, and we'll talk about this some more. So you let me know when you want to talk about some of the stuff. We'll bring you right on.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Mandi. You have a good night.
You too.
Have a good time down under.
Always. Bye.
All right. Bye. All right, folks. That was Mandi Moo, and you know her mostly through Teresa Dantone and some of our other people here, Pure Love Ascension, and who all else is involved with Teresa that's here tonight. Many of you know her, so thank you, Teresa. And I was going to say, what did I see? Steve Clark said, $5 in that piece of paper saying you have a degree can get you a cup of coffee most places. Ain't that the truth? It'll make a nice placemat, huh? And so thank you all for coming in tonight. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And we're going to take a 23-hour break, however, and we're going to be back after that. And so I want you to go on your merry ways tonight, and remember to live long and prosper. Have a good night.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.